close out it. Everything else so I can focus on us, Connor. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Money and Stuff. I know it has been a while. I think it's been, what, Connor, since like January since we recorded?
Yeah, like beginning of January.
I mean, we tried to record last week, and I don't know what happened. It would have been a fantastic. God, man, so many new listeners. If we could have just missed it, right? Yeah, I don't know. Audio problems. We still don't know what happened in the trash bin.
We'll have to re-record it at some point. It was a good topic, but
yeah, honestly, I can't even remember what we talked about. So anyway, been a while. That's our fault. You know, it's this whole podcast thing. It's a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. You know, coming up with something to talk about all the time, finding time to talk about it and record it. Like, it's hard.
Starting to understand why it's a full-time job for a lot of people when they get a podcast going.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Well, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so we're talking about a statistic from an article that I was reading the other day. It was about 9 facts about retirement, and one of the facts talked about how, on average, individuals 65 and older spend about 4 hours on average watching television per day, which kind of surprising, kind of not, but I thought that'd be a good thing for us to sink our teeth into and, talk about what's going on.
Sure. All right, let me ask this. Does 4 hours sound like a lot to you?
It sounds like a lot initially, but then I realize, like, when I look at my phone at the end of the day and I get a screen time summary, I'm like, 4 hours isn't as much time as I used to think.
But what about television? Like every night? Like, are there, like, I don't know your television viewing habits. Like, can you think of 4 hours worth of programming that you watch?
Nope. I mean, if there's like a lot of games on, like on a Sunday, an NFL Sunday, I could definitely spend 4 hours watching, but like every day, yeah. I mean, it's, I can see how it could happen, right? Like if I just leave my TV on and have the news going for 4 hours, like I could see how that happens, but it sounds like
I think
pretty
this is like
consistent.
active watching.
Yeah.
It's like active. Okay. So what generation do you fall into?
I am at the
You're millennial,
back end of millennial.
So after you told me about this, I went and looked up some stats, and it's pretty interesting, right? I did it by generation, right? Baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z. And so on average, it said baby boomers watch 4 to 5 hours of television a day. Gen X watches 3 to 4. Millennials watch 2 to 3. And Gen Z is 1 to 2. So every generation watches 1 hour of television less per day. Discuss.
Interesting. Discuss. I mean, it makes sense, right? I shouldn't say just, it makes sense, but it kind of correlates, I think, with new technology and newer forms or different forms of being able to consume media and consume content, for lack of a better term. As newer technology comes out and newer abilities to do that come out, younger generations, I would imagine, are more attuned to those more recent technologies like the internet, podcasts, YouTube, things like that. But if you've spent the majority of your life watching TV to get news, entertainment, whatever it is, yeah, I could see how that continues throughout your life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I don't know if it was, I don't know if I would call it the height, but if I think about baby boomers during their, I don't want to call it peak years, but formative years, maybe that's what I mean. So with baby boomers, when were they? They were born 1946 to 64, right? So um, I would say part their childhood very much probably they were like the first generation that childhood revolved around the television, right? And then you think about their time in early adulthood. So you're talking about late 60s, 70s, early 80s. I mean, that is prime time sitcom, right? That's like sitcom is like tons of sitcoms, classic sitcoms. Those are all over the airwaves. Um, yeah, I think you're right. I think that was the main source of entertainment was the television. It was like it was the new thing that had taken over when they were young, right? So I think you're right. I think that's a huge part of it. And my son is in, I guess he's in Gen Z. Yeah, he's a Gen Z. That kid never watches television. Like the only time he will is if we're like, hey, come watch this with us, just to try to get some time spent with him. But I think about being a kid and like, it wasn't like my parents weren't encouraging me to watch television, right? It was like, go outside, go do something. Um, but I think maybe in my mind, I keep thinking like, what can I do with this kid that he'll want to spend some time with me? I know, watch TV, but he's got absolutely no desire to watch television, you know?
Yeah. I think what you said about it being, during those formative years for baby boomers, um, I mean, in real time, from the time that they were growing up and watching TV, they've basically seen that rapid evolution in the technology go from 6 channels on the TV, black and white, to more channels, color TV. You saw the new, like you said, all these sitcoms. I mean, you had a golden age of television almost in that time, and they lived through the news turning into a 24-hour news cycle. I mean,
Hmm.
it they really were experiencing like that rapid development, I think, of the technology. And it's almost comparable, like to your example with your son. It's almost comparable to like back then, if you're a baby boomer and you're growing up, having your parents say, "Hey, come listen to the radio with me," and you're like,
Sure.
"I got the TV. Why would I go
Yeah, I
listen to the
guess
radio?"
yeah, I guess so. If I think about my son, so he was born in 2008 and the smartphone, came about in 2007. So probably the biggest source of his entertainment is on a phone, right? And the phone has just always been a part of his life. And so if you think about baby boomers, maybe not early baby boomers like 1946, but certainly say 1955 to 1964, probably the first generation where the majority of people had a television in their house from the time they were born, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Almost the like earlier version of having the computer in the house for the first time, or having a computer in
Yeah.
every home.
Yeah. Though, I wonder too how much of it has to do with time. So if you think about the baby boomer generation, like, I mean, who's at home more than them right now, right? Like they're all hitting their retirement years, right? So maybe it's just a factor of their home.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely make sense. Combine that with the fact that it seems like more and more of these cable networks are
Mm-hmm.
producing, shows and entertainment content that is more targeted to older generations. It seems like they're pretty aware that that is the bulk of their viewing audience. It's interesting though, right? Because like I like the contrast between just using your son as an example in terms of being representative of that younger generation, but that shift in less average TV hours per day. I would be very curious
Mm-hmm.
if you had like a way to compare and contrast that with screen time in general. Like if they're not spending 4 hours watching TV.
Yeah, that would be. Well, that's certainly a way, something to think about. Maybe 4 hours isn't as bad as we're saying right now, right? Because maybe if we get total screen time, it might actually be worse than some of the other generations, right? And if you think about 4 hours out of a 24-hour day, um, I mean, they're spending a lot of other time doing something else, right? So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, let's say 6 to 8 hours of sleep, so let's just say six. Let's say 6 hours of sleep plus 4 hours of television. So there's still 14 hours of doing something else. So maybe 4 hours isn't really, maybe that's not bad. Maybe that's not as bad as you're making it out to be, Connor.
You monster.
How dare you?
It's, I mean, it is very interesting. I'm sure a big part of it just comes down to, routine and what you've always done. Like if your if part of your day, when you were working was coming home, having dinner, and then sitting and watching TV for a few hours, it makes sense that even with newer forms of media, if you've been doing it that way for 20 years, you're not, most of the time, I would imagine, you're not really interested in like trying to completely shift the way that you go about, consuming media, entertainment, whatever it might be.
Or even just what you do with your day, right? Like, I think I probably watch more television than average. So let's see, Generation X is 3 to 4 hours a day. Um, but maybe that goes back to what you said earlier about it just being on. I don't know that I really watch that much television as much as I have the television on, um, because it's kind of a habit, right? Like I grew up, you come home, you eat dinner, you see what's on the television, and but at that time, like when I was growing up, every night of the week there was something that you wanted to watch. There were sitcoms were made for family viewing, and I got to admit, I couldn't really tell you what I watch because not because I don't want to. I'm not saying like I can't tell you what I watch. You don't want to know. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is most of the time I turned the television on and I couldn't tell you what shows on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. We used to know those things. I watch I can't, for some reason, I think I remember Alf coming on Mondays. I don't really remember, but I watch this on Mondays, this on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. I don't know what comes on when, right? I barely know a few shows that are on right now. And I think television, I think you're right. I think a lot of the television that is on when I turn the TV on, I don't think it's geared towards me. There's a lot of NCIS on there, right? I know I joked about Blue Bloods earlier, but man, Blue Bloods is always on. I don't know how they're canceling this show, right? Like, why would you? It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, how can it always be on? It's popular enough to always be on, but not popular enough to keep on the air or keep making new episodes? I don't know. I'm getting away from the
One
point.
thing,
The point is, there was always something to watch, and I kept that habit. I still have that habit that I turn the television on. And now I'm like, well, what am I actually doing during that time? I'm either searching for something to watch, which I never find anything, which is telling me it's probably a waste of money and I should save it, right? But I'll finally settle on something that's okay being on in the background, and I just do crossword puzzles all night. I do crossword puzzles until it's time to go. That's what I do. Right?
So you'll
Like,
have it on almost as back like white noise, like background just sound.
yeah, because the television's supposed to be on. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's
I
ridiculous.
mean,
Yeah.
one thing that you made me think about in terms of like just using the blue blood example, if it's on all the time, how could it possibly get canceled? I would imagine that like the way that they'll measure a show's success, or I think the way that they measure the success is like the viewing rate on premieres of episodes or premieres of, a show, whatever it is. But nowadays, the feature of having everything on demand, in addition to having the live, what's coming on at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that has put a significant hit in the numbers of live viewings, because I know for myself in the past, like you said, I knew what shows came on which days, and I made a point of like, oh, I want to make sure I watch this, make sure I turn the TV on and I'm ready to go at that time. Nowadays, there isn't anything that I'm like, I have to see this live, other than maybe like a sports game, a sports match, sports game. I sound like I don't know anything about sports when I say that, but like other than that,
Have
everything
you ever
else,
watched sports before?
I'm all about sports. Big sports guy.
I'm all about the sports involving the throwing and the hitting, right? Hitting, running. I like the sports.
Just shooting that field goal and making that 3 point
Yeah.
pass.
Oh man, I really thought this was going to go a different direction. I didn't think we'd get this deep into why baby boomers watch television. I really thought we'd get into to more like, we talk so much to our clients about the importance of knowing what you're going to be doing in retirement. And I really thought we were going to talk about how it could be an indication of how most people don't know what they're going to do when they get to retirement. But I think we're 20 minutes in. I think we've probably given the people enough of our wonderings as to why people watch television. Yeah, but I will say, man, like when it comes to television and the future of television, with Gen Z only watching 1 or 2 hours of television a day, you're like, what does that mean for the future of television? What is it going to look like 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, right? And I wonder how much of that 1 or 2 hours of television they're watching is because of their Gen X parents telling them like, hey, come watch TV with me.
Begrudgingly watching
they
TV.
may not watch television. Yeah, they may not watch it at all if it wasn't for their parents trying to actually spend some time with them. All right. That's it. Good enough. Boomers, you watch more TV than everybody else. I think we've proven that we have no idea why, and that it may not be a bad thing. I mean, you think about it, 4 to 5 hours when you've got a lot of free time, and I'm watching 3 to 4 hours when I have maybe 3 or 4 hours of free time. maybe 4 to 5 hours is not so bad. All right, guys.
Yeah.
If you stuck around for this, we really appreciate you. Hopefully this solved all your retirement problems, and you have no questions about your money after this episode whatsoever. But if you do have
This probably
questions,
leans more into the stuff side of money
there's
and
some
stuff.
stuff for you. That's right. There's some stuff. Any other stuff you want us to talk about, let us know. We'll talk about it. If we talked about this, we'll talk about anything. All right, guys. Till next time, we'll see you again. Thanks.